Talking about the values. Oh, one thing that's kind of funny is ASU Online tells me that, oh, you should have a script. You can read from the script and you'll be smooth and you'll have these uhs. And I know I reuse words like basically or the thing is or something like that. And, we all have our hackneyed speech patterns. But the main reason why I don't do a script is for the simple reason it would just feel just kind of stiff and artificial, and I'd rather be freewheeling. The other problem, and the thing is, if I'm going to go to the trouble to write a script, why read it? I might as well just post it and you could just read it. But anyway, so we've been talking about the values, and the values we've talked about so far are how emotion affects, how do we touch people emotionally about our products, and also we've talked about utility. Now the third part is economic value. And so an economic value to a customer is basically how much is it costing me right now to do business minus the lifetime cost of your product. And naturally, if your cost of your product is less, then I have a gain. The types of utility savings have to do with, some examples are price, like Walmart, ownership, like cloud computing services, that I can save money. Usage, energy efficient appliances are a savings example. Maintenance, I don't have to do oil changes that often. Free shipping, and disposal. These are examples of types of things that you can save money for me in terms of utility. Here's an example of a real company of B2B for capital equipment. And what it comes down to is this company, Surfect, can save you 40%. They compared themselves in cost to the tools that they currently were using. Is a hybrid worth it? And actually, if you go through the math, it actually isn't. And the reason why is Civics get 32 miles per gallon. And not only that, they're a lot cheaper car. And so in order to break even, if you drive a lot, like $50,000 miles a year, it's worth it. Dr. Cho is one of the few people who will actually go through this analysis, but that's an example of economics. Another example is B2B in terms of company economics, and just to contact somebody. As you can see, personal selling gets really, really expensive. Web email is dirt cheap. And typically you can find these kind of costs of how much it costs to actually contact customers, and it's in the company's general selling and administrative parameter on the income statement, or it's also called GSA. In terms of trial, how do I get somebody to try something? And what it comes down to is, are they self-motivated and have a need? That's easy. And on the other end of the spectrum is that I have to persuade them, and so I have to influence them. And things that are in the middle is like, are there laws? They've already expressed to me I have an interest. That's a much easier customer to deal with, and this is why search engine is so powerful. Because let's face it, if you're going to search for a product, you've already established I'm interested, and so sales are easier. In terms of inducing customers to purchase something, pain and gain, what triggers do they have, what are their biases, what are their tendencies, and what's the risk reward. That's why you induce people. That's why you offer them free stuff in order to incentivize them to go ahead and do it. The thing is, economic has very straightforward gains and losses. Functional benefits can actually be quantified. Psychological is the one that's difficult to get a grasp on. And so you need to really understand your customer to figure out what their sensitivities are. How do I learn about my customer? Well, I could do surveys, I could do focus groups, get certain groups of people together and talk to them. I can talk to thought leaders, guys who are experts in the field. I can look at data that already exists and see how people act. I can look at their price sensitivity. Are they sensitive to price changes? Then guess what? I can entice them with money. And then finally, big data, get large volumes of data to see how people behave. And from this, we can derive probabilities of how people will act. An adoption overview. Here are the factors. Is it about value? Is it about a network effect? Or can I make it mandatory? And so in terms of adopting, if they're driven by value, then I know it's about functional, psychological, and economic. Network effects about P's and Q's, and mandatory is about the context. The thing is, my customers can change over time. And there are such things as bad customers. And for those of you who've worked in retail or something like that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And those are the ones that cost you a lot of money and time and aren't likely to buy. And those people you basically have to abandon. Your customers can change over time, their needs can change over time, and the use of the product can change. And this is what's referred to as the S-curve. In the early going of your products, the expectations are much different than when you reach growth, maturity, and decline. And so products follow an S-curve. And they're difficult to predict. And they're difficult to predict because if the context or landscape changes, then how customers behave change. Technology can cause changes. Network effects can cause changes. When everybody went over to Facebook from MySpace, that changed how people did social networking. And so trying to apply a static strategy on something that's moving is very difficult. Disruption. What disruption is that you can introduce a price that results in reduction, and it introduces a new value to the product. And so what this has to do is with customer elasticity. And what elasticity means is how sensitive is your customer to pricing. The thing is, disruption doesn't always work. For example, if I can disrupt the sales market by putting a Walmart in a town of 50,000 people. So you think, oh, well, all I have to do is disrupt Walmart. The problem is that a 50,000 person market can only sustain one mega store. It can't sustain two mega stores. And so therefore, that's a case where disruption doesn't work. In terms of market behavior, the way your markets change over time, first, early on, you could have a lot of competitors, especially if it's a new field. And then what will happen is they'll start to weed out, because now it's about marketing, competing, your customers become more price sensitive and everything else. And then when you get to the end, markets die for a reason. And so what ends up happening is you just might have some niche players. In terms of how your customers evolve, the early ones are the funnest because they're the ones who are really passionate. But then you hit the chasm. And then what happens is your customers become much different. And the way to think about the chasm, it's what's the difference between you buying technology and your parents buying technology. Yeah, there's a gap in there. And so this is what the chasm looks like, and I'll discuss it in the next lecture.